You might think you know how flying works. Buy a ticket, pack light, show up early. Well, airlines have been rewriting those rules. Quietly. Now your flight price might be determined by AI. Solo travelers secretly being charged more. These aren't just random updates. They're the kinds of changes that could seriously mess with your next trip if you don't know about them. Some could save you money, and a few are honestly shady and appalling. But you're gonna want to know about them before your next flight. So let's break it down and get started with a truly sneaky one. Delta has started using AI to set ticket prices. This means the cost of your flight could change based on stuff like your search history or even the type of device you use. It's like price discrimination, but on steroids. You and the person sitting next to you could end up paying totally different amounts for the same flight, booked at the same time, just because you searched twice before booking. Airlines are trying to dress it up under names like personalized pricing, but you could also call it, "We know you're desperate and should therefore pay more." For now, this is only in the early stages, with Delta aiming to apply AI pricing to around 20% of tickets by the end of the year. But there's already widespread backlash, and with any luck, airlines will stop it altogether before then. But if it does keep up and more airlines start to use AI-powered price discrimination, there's a good chance people might ditch airline websites altogether. I mean, wouldn't you at least consider going to a third-party alternative to avoid having to pay extra just because you use an iPhone instead of an Android? And another form of price discrimination that we've seen airlines shamelessly turning to recently is a kind of solo traveler surcharge. I'm not talking about what airlines around the world have been doing for years, where they'll give the occasional discount to couples or groups. What we're seeing now is a standardized higher price forced on those traveling alone. You'd think airlines would have realized literally nobody asked for this. But months after we initially started to see airlines charging extra for solo travelers, they still haven't stopped. In a recent video where I first covered this topic, I showed you an example of how flying from Chicago to Lexington, Kentucky would cost you more per ticket if you're traveling solo. Over a month later, this is still the case, and it's not just a one-off thing for flights to Kentucky. It's not a Kentucky surcharge. Say you wanted to fly from Charlotte, North Carolina to Tampa, Florida. American Airlines is charging $413 per ticket if you fly solo. But if you pair up, then it's $555 for 2 tickets, which breaks down to $288 per person. So traveling solo to Tampa means you need to pay $125 extra. I mean, it's one thing if you're traveling solo and a hotel costs you the same as it would cost 2 or 3 people. But one airplane seat is one airplane seat. It doesn't even make sense. To beat it, first you want to compare prices for one traveler versus 2 or more. If it doesn't apply, then it doesn't apply. If it does though, there are a few different approaches you could take. Personally, I would probably just book with a different airline. Something about forcing solo travelers to pay extra to fly does not sit right with me. But if you need to take a particular flight, check cash prices against points and miles prices. There's a good chance the airline is not applying a solo surcharge to award bookings. If you're not into award travel though, there's something else you could try. Recently, some travelers have been testing out booking for 2 and then canceling 1 and keeping the airline credit. But that's not always gonna work, so do your homework before you try it. Honestly, I nearly always travel with my wife, so I can't talk from personal experience on this one, but let us know what you do down in the comments. There are hidden fees all around, but all the while, airlines have been canceling their flights like crazy lately. Travel to the US is way down this year, and airlines flying to and from the US continue to cancel routes as they see that they can't fill planes. But that said, it is not all bad news for travelers looking to fly to and from the US. First off, American Airlines has started trialing one-stop security at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport for flights arriving from London Heathrow. Till now, even just transiting through US airports means you have to clear immigration, collect your check bag, and then re-clear security. This turns that all into a one-stop process that happens at your arrival gate, and it could potentially mean saving hours when transiting through or arriving to the US. And route changes aren't only about flights being canceled either. There are a few new routes around the world that are worth knowing about. Recently, airlines have been restarting their flights to the country of Syria. At first, flights were only possible to the country's capital of Damascus. But now both Royal Jordanian and Turkish Airlines have restarted their flights to the cultural hub of Aleppo. And circling back to flights to and from the US, another Middle Eastern airline has pretty exciting news for you. Gulf Air is launching flights between its hub in Bahrain and New York, opening a lot of new routing possibilities for passengers. While it won't fully make up for all of the other canceled routes, Gulf Air is not an airline to sleep on. I recently tested out the airline myself while traveling in the Middle East and was even able to take advantage of their free stopover tour in Bahrain. So make sure you're subscribed with alerts on to be the first to know when that video drops. But the big lesson here? Now more than ever, if you're looking at booking routes to and from the US, know that if demand isn't high, there's a good chance your flight could end up canceled. And moving on to some potentially better news in Europe. If you're tired of having to pay 60 euros to bring your own backpack on board an airplane, so is the EU. European lawmakers are currently pushing for a rule that would force all airlines, including Ryanair and Wizz Air, to include one free carry-on bag in their base fare. Right now, baggage rules and fees change depending on the airline, the route, the day of the week, and perhaps what mood their website is in. This proposal isn't law quite yet, but it's gaining traction. And if it passes, budget airlines will have to rethink their entire pricing strategy. As in, no more daylight robbery. So far, the chances seem pretty high that it will actually go through, and a handful of budget airlines have already started increasing baggage allowances accordingly. And another interesting development in Europe right now is the push for making the carbon emissions of flying visible when booking flights. It's no secret that aviation plays a huge role in carbon emissions, but chances are it's not something you heavily consider when booking flights. Next time you go to book a flight to, from, or within Europe, that might change though. Alongside the price, airlines are starting to show the estimated carbon emissions of the route you're booking. Air France already has this live, for example. But even though this is a growing push by the EU, in reality websites like Google Flights and Skyscanner have already been providing similar information for a while. It doesn't change your options, you can still pick the cheapest flights, but if one route causes way more emissions than another, some travelers will start rethinking. That's especially true when the price isn't much different. What do you think about this one? Would you choose a route with lower carbon emissions if you had the data right next to the price? And another change going down in Europe right now has to do with a new fee that will apply to visitors from around 60 countries. That includes the US, Canada, Australia, and Japan. It's called ETIAS, or ETIAS, short for European Travel Information and Authorization System. It's basically the EU's version of the US ESTA. You'll have to apply online before your trip and pay a small fee. It looks like it's going to be 20 euros, and then you'll be allowed to enter 30 different European countries. The United Kingdom already rolled out their own version of this earlier this year called ETA. I tested it out myself a few months ago, and it's really quite straightforward. But the thing about ETIAS, so the European version, is that it's been getting delayed for years. Finally though, it seems like it's actually going to go live in the fourth quarter of 2026. So you've still got a little time, but you definitely want to keep this on your radar, especially if you're one of the millions who never needed a visa to visit most of Europe before. This is not a full-blown visa, by the way, it's just a simple travel authorization. But once it goes live, forgetting about it will mean that you cannot fly. Plus, beyond new requirements to visit Europe, there's another big change coming. The classic European passport stamp is on the way out. Starting in October 2025, the EU will begin phasing in a new biometric entry-exit system. Instead of getting your passport stamped, travelers will have their fingerprints and face scanned upon entry and exit. This will mean quicker lines for many, especially those with biometric passports. The EU says this is all about modernization and efficiency, but for those who love collecting passport stamps, it might feel like the end of an era. And recently on this channel, we looked at a new rule that you all sincerely hated. The country of Turkey is now charging people who stand up or even unbuckle before the seatbelt sign is turned off after arriving to the gate. But this country's been making waves for another strict approach that will impact travelers. Now you may not be able to install or activate an eSIM from foreign providers once you're already in Turkey, especially if you don't have a VPN. That means after arrival to the country, you might not be able to change plans, top up data, or even install your eSIM. But getting around this new rule in Turkey is mostly as easy as purchasing and fully installing your eSIM before departure from another country. If you still forget, a VPN may be the key to still being able to set up your eSIM once you're in Turkey. That said, I'm a big fan of eSIMs. They're easy as could be and usually great value. And if you're in need of an eSIM, VPN, or both, I've left links down in the description. So yeah, right now air travel is getting smarter, sneakier, and weirder. AI is trying to charge you extra for your flight, facial recognition is taking over passport stamps, solo travelers are getting low-key penalized, routes are shifting massively around the world, and carry-on fees, at least in Europe, might finally be going away. It's a lot, but if you stay ahead of it, you can travel smoother and avoid some of the most annoying surprises. If this video helped you out, like, subscribe, and oh, why not, drop a comment. Which of these changes bugs you the most? Or do you actually like one of them? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.